Howdy, friend. This is just a silly little thing that I had going on. Beginning of the year, I wrote a little review of Boros by Lil Darky, and I was like, hey, I want to start making videos. It's short, a little over 1,000 words. I can just make this into a little thing, a short little video, and this is going to be my first real thing that I think is going to show what I can do to some degree. So, thank you for watching. Yee-haw. Lil Darky's album, Boros, is my favorite album of 2021. If you look at how the album is structured, I would argue that the album should start with the song Oro, which is supported by the title. In mythology, the Ouroboros is presented as a snake eating its own tail as a way to symbolize an infinite cycle. This is also supported by the song preceding Oro, Yeti, which is a much more total climactic ending to the album with its nearly 5-minute long runtime, which over doubles that of the next longest song, that cycles between various styles and ideas, but that fact is the ultimate argument against the idea. Musically, the sound is a cascade of synthetic sounds and heavily modified organic sounds that, mixed with gravelly, nearly cartoonish vocals, create a nearly glitchcore-ish experience that is accented by a deep bass and his normal rapping that all culminate in a deeply impersonal take on a personal experience. It becomes clear that his natural instinct is to express his displeasure with the status quo and feelings of inadequacy within his art, but feels that it falls on deaf ears and displays an unlikable sense of vulnerability, so he covers them in comical expressions and extreme sarcasm that lessens the impact of those words on the viewers and protects his disconnect from a full frontal exposure to an equally indifferent and hateful industry. The structure is closer to a verbal representation of a Rothko painting, with smooth shapes that are cut off and abstracted with blurry lines and drastic color contrasts that only present themselves when viewed in context of the whole song. Without that context, it can feel like a completely meaningless series of ups and downs, twists and turns, or scratchy and unsatisfying brushstrokes that only create a senselessly put together mess of ideas. But if you have a full scope on the project, it brings you right back around to where you started. I like to think that this was his intended effect. He's somewhat expressed an interest in contemporary art with his song Composition 3 in red, white, and black, which parallels the art and naming conventions of an artist like Barnett Newman, but musically, these connections can only be seen in a more natural form in Boros rather than This Does Not Exist, which is where the song originates from. Simply put, Boros is an album completely consumed by the idea of nihilism, as is the majority of Darky's music. But this album seems especially susceptible to these themes with the ultra-grunge, nearly pure Screamo elements that permeate the entirety of Boros. While the notorious Darky style, which consists of fast-paced rhymes interjected with changes into a much tougher and more aggressive voice, is still found in Boros, it takes a back seat as, thematically, the hateful disassociation away from normal life and modern societal norms that comes from the Screamo vocals consume the piece. The reason I made the statement that the idea of Yeti being the true conclusion may be contradicted is because, thematically, it would be more appropriate to conclude this painful disillusionment that transcended a mindset and manifested into an album with a quieter, less impactful song like Futile, as well as to say that the title of it suggests a multitude of things to be futile in the eyes of Lil Darky. Not just the modern interpretation of society and internet culture that propelled him into fame based on a viral clip of one of his songs that didn't give him time to grow as a young adult and to progress as an artist, but instead forced a set of idealistic expectations on a young and inexperienced artist, but that one could find the creative process to be futile because it's impossible to meet your own expectations, as well as to create a piece of art that sparks mass appeal in any meaningful way. In the end, as of right now, Lil Darky is a niche, internet-made musician that hasn't truly been caught in the mainstream, but has simply drifted in and out of it in a way that satisfies none of the desires of an artist, and the frustration caused by this is expertly expressed in Boros. Another permeating idea within Boros is that Lil Darky doesn't really seem to want to be famous, at least not right now. With his criticism of internet culture, it's a short jump in logic to believe that Darky would have rathered his fame have come more organically than to have been shot into popularity through a TikTok sound, as it didn't allow him to progress in his style and maturity before being thrust out in front of an unaccepting audience that cast labels against him and his music, that portrayed him in a completely non-complimentary and unintended light. Not to mention that he clearly completely resents his use of mind-altering substances and feels that a sudden influx of influence and money have only worsened his addiction to a degree that it feels futile to try to stop. To cycle back to the meaning of the title, I think that it's simply a reflection of his creative process. He's stuck in a never-ending cycle of creating and being disappointed by both his creations and the way it is perceived, yet, despite the nihilistic nature of the album, there is a bright spot in this sea of despair. By releasing this experimental and truly non-traditional album, in a way, Darky has freed himself from this cycle that has defined his career up to this point. He has broken out of the cultural norm, which he was already on the edge of, and opened his future to a world of unrestricted artistry. The only question is, will it stick? Will it financially succeed in a way that will support his kind of freedom? Or will he be tethered back into his cycle? His Ouroboros. Only time will tell. So that's that. Thank you for going around the bend with me on this short little adventure. Hopefully this will be the beginning of something much greater, and the quality will only improve, and my ability to speak will be exponentially increase. And I don't know, I think this is really the beginning of something I really want to continue doing. So thank you again. Goodbye.